Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you, even if remotely. In recent years, I presented many technical talks based on Django, but at a certain point, I felt the need to share with the community how much benefit I'm gained from Django along my journey as a member of its community. Actually, my journey as a member of the Python community starts more or less from the event in this photo. Here, I'm one of the participants of the Plon conference 2007. And with me in this photo, there is some of you. Also one of the organizers of the conference we are in now. And I'm sure you understood who I'm talking about. The awareness I've gained from then until today is that taking full advantage of open source software means getting involved in its community. I'll try to share with you various ways I've tried to do this in the hope that it will be inspired or even interest you. But first, it's in my duty to introduce myself. I'm Paolo Melchiorre, and I'm the CTO of 20Tab, a Pythonic software company based in Rome. I'm a software engineer, a long-time Python backend developer. And after using Django for a few years, I became a contributor to the project. I've always loved attending conferences, and over the year, I became a speaker. This presents me today, but my journey of involvement in Django has been a long one. The first step in getting involved in a community is to choose the community itself. In my career as a developer, from high school to university, I had to use many programming languages. But when I was able to, I chose to use Python. By choosing Python, I considered that it had these characteristics: an open source license, a foundation behind it, and not a single company, a community capable of giving a direction to the development, a code of conduct, and above all, welcoming and positive people, such the creator of Python itself. Guido Rosum is the reference person of the community, even if he's not longer the benevolent dictator for life. The Python community is positively affected by his open and welcoming nature. Another community that owes a lot to Guido is the Zope community, to whose development Guido contributed during the early years. Actually, Zope was the first Python web framework I ever had used. The first step towards engagement for me was to join the small Italian community of users of Plon, a Zope-based CMS. A local community, it's easy for new members to join, as no language barriers, share a common cultural background among its members, and it's easier to share experience and exchange also mutual help. Today, the local communities of Python and Django are many, so I invite you to join one of them. This is a photo of the member of the Italian Plon community in 2007, at the end of Open Hell, my first local conference organized in my city, Pescara. In fact, you can see the beach in the background. At that time, I had a little experience as a developer, and I was afraid of not being able to contribute in a valid way. And so my involvement in this community was biased. But being part of the Plon community allowed me to learn Python and led to me to participate in many Plon conferences, and also in a EuroPython 2011, my first Python conference, which made me achieve many goals. Learn more about Python language itself. I became aware of Python 3. Meet other community related to Python, Networking with other members of the community, meeting the friendly companies, and above all, knowing the new emerging project. In fact, I saw my first Django talk, which I had only heard about before. In this photo, there are the Plon developers during EuroPython 2011. Some of them I met over the years in conferences, other I followed them online, and other are now parts of the Django community. I think that People, more than contents, are the greatest value of a conference like this. Shortly after that conference, I started using Django 1.3. Being a more experienced developer, I immediately dived deep in Django, having many benefits. These are the actions I did and also recommend to you. Using a modern version of Python, try the Django tutorial to learn the basics. Study the official documentation to have an advanced knowledge. Follow the Django channels to stay up to date and attend specific Django events to get to know other members of the community. This is a photo of my first Djangocon Europe, the 2017 one, held in Florence. I think I'm on the edge. In previous year, I had continued attending conferences, but the first Djangocon allowed to me to truly feel part of the Django community and meet the most engaged member of the community in person. These things inspired me to really get involved after 10 years of biased participation in the community. The first act of involvement in the community was a contribution to the Django code. In a project, I had to add a new ID field on existing models. I tried to add a Postgres function in Django to quickly generate random UID. After verifying the validity of the solution, I studied the contribution guidelines to Django. I created an issue on its tracker, and I opened a pull request with the solution already tested. The process took some time, but by the end, I already learned a lot about Django and the best practice for writing better code. This is my first pull request. As you can see, the reviewers are all experienced Django contributors. There is also the former Django fellow, Tim Graham, who at the end merged my pull request. Having the ability to get reviews of your code from such experienced people is a great way to become a better programmer. No matter how many experienced colleagues you have in your company, I don't think you will ever get a review of your Django code from such expert developers as the core contributors of Django. I was sure I couldn't contribute to a sprint on Django, but after Djangocon Europe 2017, I had my own pull requests to review, which was a great reason to participate. At the start of the sprint, I proposed my work on my pull request, and I asked for help on how to proceed. When I felt ready, I asked for a review of my code, and after making the required changes, I was able to complete the work and play the gong as per sprint tradition. My pull request was merged at the end after a few days into the Django 2.0 code. In this photo, I'm at the end of the sprint with Mark Tamlin, the original creator of the Django Postgres module, and Marcus Alterman, a Django core developer, who helped me in my work and reviewed my pull request. Participating in a sprint on Django is a unique opportunity that I recommend to try. It allows you to connect with many experienced developers, and in the end, you will be a better developer and also a more aware member of the community. Following Django more closely, I learned of a very interesting new feature, the Fulltext search. After its release in Django 1.10, I studied it, and shortly after, I used it for the first time in a Django project. Working with this feature allowed me to verify what I studied, and I became more experienced. Pushed by my company, I sent a talk proposal on the Fulltext search to my favorite conference, Pike Italia, which was accepted in 2017 edition. The talk preparation was challenging, but I learned a lot more than I ever did about the subject. I successfully presented the talk in Italian, my mother language. In this what I just gave my first talk at Pike on Italia 2017 in a small room full of other Italian Django developers. The experience was intense, but I gained more confidence as a member of the community. I received excellent feedbacks. I learned the basic of public speaking, and I increased my knowledge on the subject. I also improved the project from which it all started. If you also have similar goals, I recommend you try giving a talk. In previous conferences, I had met Django girls, which seemed to me a great way to increase the diversity in the community. I found out that the next workshop would be held in Rimini, a couple of hours away by train, and so I signed up as a mentor. I was welcomed into the team, and I was put in contact with the participants to help them to get ready for the workshop. Taking part of the event was very simple, a really positive experience that I recommend to everyone. During the event, I also updated the Python and the Django version of the tutorial. This is the photo of my Django Girls group, all smart girls who have completed the whole workshop. The experience gave me a bit of confidence as a coach. I understood better the concept of Django that I had to explain to them and meet other talented mentors from all over the world. After my first talk, I decided to improve it, and despite my poor English skill, I also sent a proposal to EuroPython 2017, which that year was held in Italy. My proposal was refused, but I continued to work on that English presentation anyway for future conferences. A few days before the conference, an organizer proposed to replace another speaker, and I immediately accepted. Giving my talk in English was very challenging, but I had several benefits. The audience was bigger, the participants were international, I got better feedback, my confidence as a speaker increased, and I also improved my skill as an English speaker. This is the photo of my talk at EuroPython 2017. In front of me, there were a room full of people who did not speak my language. But my network of contact has expanded a lot, and I even received an invitation to give my talk in a Postgres conference. This experience forced me to go far outside my comfort zone. At EuroPython 2017, we planned self-organized sprints, and so I proposed a sprint to work on the search of the Django official website. About 10 developers joined me, and by the end of the day, almost everyone had managed to set up the Django website locally. We had reported some issues, and we had a proof of concept of the function. Organizing a small sprint was a more challenging experience than just participating in it, but it gave to me the unique opportunity to coordinate the work between excellent developers from many parts of the world. I received specialized help in reaching the goal, learned new working approach, and expanded the network of contacts, more than if I had been just a participant. This is a photo of my group working on Django during the EuroPython 2017 sprints. It was a pleasure to coordinate such a good developers and to be able to achieve our results at the end of the day. The general atmosphere of the sprint was unique, with many groups dedicated to different Python projects. An intense experience, but one that I recommend. Working on my talk on Fulltext search, I had used a lot the search function on the Django website. I then came up with the idea to investigate how that function was implemented, and I discovered that the database used was Postgres, but the search function was delegated to an external search engine. On the Django developer mailing list, I proposed a change to replace the external search engine with only Django and Postgres. The discussion involved many Django developers who talked about it for a few days. And for me, it was very useful to understand their needs. After the proof of concept that came out from the sprint, I worked hard on opening a fully functional pull request. And after a careful review, Tim Graham, the Django fellow, merged it a few months later. This is the Django website search. I have added more feature to it after my first pull request, and more feature will be added in next month. Working on such an important site allowed me to learn a lot about Django and improve my skill as a software architect. I also recommend that you try to contribute to the Django website. You will help the community and you will improve your skill. In addition to the official documentation, I have learned a lot from reading other developers' articles. Many speakers also had their own blogs and all recommend it as a personal improvement. So after some research, I decided to create a static site. I used Pelican based on Python and Jinja. I started by tracking all my talks on the site. I had small Django how-tos, and then I wrote bigger articles. Writing this type of article allowed me to improve my technical skills. This is a page of my static website. I recently updated the template by creating my own theme from scratch in order to have an original one and to be able to add all the features I needed. Such the automatic switch to the dark version if the device that displays it is in that mode. Writing my own template made me improve my front-end skill, and since I usually do the backend, it was very instructive. I think I'm the first user of my own website because I often find myself rereading my own article. One way to take even more advantage of the content you create is to share it. Collecting the comments and feedbacks you receive allows you to validate them and increase your knowledge. For example, I recommend that you add an RSS feed to your site so you can get your posts to appear on the Django website. Adding a comment form to the site also allows you to receive a lot of useful feedback. An easy way to get feedback is also to share it on your social network with your follower. If, on the other hand, you are willing to receive critical but perhaps even more useful comments, you can share your content on news aggregators such as Hacker News. This is just the beginning of the comments page on my first big article shared on Hacker News. To my surprise, it lasted several hours on top trend, attracting a lot of attention. So I got a lot of comments, some positive and some negative. If you think you can withstand even criticism, I also recommend that you share your content as much as you can. In the end, you will have learned a lot and have improved what you have shared. An effective way I used to improve my knowledge of Django was to answer as many questions as possible from other developers. For example, at some point, I decided to deepen the Django ORM. I studied all the official documentation, and then I went to Stack Overflow to look for questions with interesting problems. At which point, I tried to solve this problem myself and sent the answer receiving several comments and votes. And in some cases, I even had the opportunity to write an article about it. To answer a question about the query set update with annotation, I found myself faced with a new problem. I tried to solve it and I sent my answer, even though there were other older ones also marked as valid. But in the end, I got a lot of positive votes and a lot of comments. I then decided to write an article on the solution that I often read again. So basically, I solved a practical problem before I found it in my daily projects. As I said before, the English language has been a great barrier between me and my involvement in the community. But by studying and also attending conferences, I was able to improve my English skill. In the group of the Italian developers, there are often newcomers who have troubles reading the Django documentation. A few months ago, I and other members of the group decided to add the Italian languages to the documentation. To do this, we had to sign up for Transifex, locate untranslated section of the documentation, and try to translate them. In case of dubs, we have relied on already translated string and asked the other for a review for the more difficult translation. Participating in this process was challenging, but at the same time very interesting and also fun, as you can see from the message of Claude Parrot, the Django heads of translation. However, by translating the documentation, I learned a lot about its structure. I discovered totally new section, and I understood much better some terms about Django that I had always used only in English. There are tons of other ways you can use to improve as a developer, and the following are just some of the other techniques that I also use. Time is your only limit. Subscribe to Django-related mailing list. Check GitHub notification for Django and related projects. Read the official Django forum, enter the Django Discord channel, and join the local Django Telegram groups. So far, I've tried to list the way that I personally use to get more involved with Django, and that have served me as a personal improvement. But I recommend that you get inspired by other developers of the Python and the Django community. To do so, I read their blog posts, follow their social accounts, subscribe their video channels, listen their podcast episode, and read their books. It will be impossible to list them here, but at the end of the talk, you can find my social contacts where you can discover the people I follow. In case you found interesting, I invite you to read and share this presentation because it is released with a Creative Commons license. Before saying goodbye, I would like to thank you all for taking part of my talk, the other speaker for interesting talks. I also thank all the organizers who made this conference possible. In particular, I thank Kelvin. As May you understood, he was the one also present at the Plon Conference 2007, which I mentioned at the beginning of this talk. After noticing my t-shirt from that conference, he said hello to me and took this photo at the Djangocon Europe 2017. Since then, I follow him and I appreciate all the work he does for the community. Grazie. I thank 20Tab, the company that encouraged and supported me in the journey I have described to you, and every day as a company contributes to the Django and its community. You can find here all his contacts. And finally, to find out more about my personal involvement with Django, use all my contacts here. With this QR code, you can download this presentation from my website. Thanks again for having me, and enjoy the next talk in the conference. Ciao.